Hi there. So, I want to talk about the stuff that I've been watching this year. At the beginning of the year, I saw some friends of mine posting watch lists, where they would give sort of brief lists of their thoughts of things that they had watched throughout the year. And being inspired by this, I then proceeded to do the same, but little did I know that this would be something that would become incredibly important to me over the course of this year, because I managed to view way more than I think I have in other years, or at least I found having a list made it a lot easier for me to realise what it was I was watching and my thoughts and feelings towards it. The first one I want to get out of the way fairly fast, but also spend some time on because this is kind of the elephant in the room, which is One Piece. At the beginning of the year, I was about at the end of Skypiea. No, it wasn't Skypiea. Longer in Longland. That was where I had been for a good long while. I hadn't really read much more because I think at the end of 2019 I'd kind of dropped off of One Piece. I was just kind of like, I'm not really wanting to try and catch up. Yeah, so 2020 was when I didn't really want to read or experience One Piece at all. But I can't really remember exactly what did it, but at some point this year I decided to go all the way from Water 7 to the end of Wano. And if you ever end up looking at that thread on my Twitter, it is just full of One Piece. It is absolutely insane. But for good reason, I think. It is an incredibly expansive world that I have an immense appreciation for. It's got some really incredible characters, some really powerful moments. Among my favourites would have to be Odin. Odin is a character introduced fairly late. He's introduced in Wano, and I absolutely loved him. He was a joy to watch. And one of the things that I think really inspired me was when I was reading the Odin backstory where he was talking about wanting to experience the world and see new things. This had been either just before or just after I'd gone to Italy with my family, and Odin discussing about how much life he found out outside of himself was a really inspiring thought, and just something which I'm so glad was put in, because he, at least to me, embodies the adventurous nature of One Piece. And then he has an absolutely tragic end, which I think just highlights just how powerful that character really is. And generally, just in general, this story really resonated with me. It felt like a story for me that had such a positive impact. I probably haven't appreciated it as much as other people who had to read it week to week or who spaced it out over an even longer period. And I do have to admit there were sections which felt bloated, confused, or generally just hard to follow. But in general, it was a really good experience for me. The next one I want to mention is the Chainsaw Man manga. So this is beyond the point which the anime has got to, so if you want to skip ahead, here's a time code. Okay, so Chainsaw Man. Chainsaw Man is a series that, I don't know, I had experienced a bit of it beforehand, but this was the first time I'd decided, you know what, I'm going to read it from start to end so that I have at least part 1 under my belt. And damn, it was a wild ride, because I read this over the course of like a day, maybe 2 or 3 days, and it just managed to hook me in just how frantic the pace was, how insane the visuals were. I read the coloured manga, it was fantastic, particularly when they used the more sort of weird and wonderful colours. And there were some seriously gut-wrenching moments. Like, I would say that it is probably one of the most bleak and cutthroat shonen series I've seen. And, man, the deaths in this one are really, really well executed. I would say that the final arc was probably not my favourite, but the moment of Denji with Makima and Makima laughing, that was probably the highlight for me, where it was a character who had lost everything. He'd lost his family, his friend, and he was in a state of depression where he just felt, I don't want to think anymore. And he used his one wish to basically become a slave to Makima, and that's just fucking, that hurt, man. And then I got to the panel of Bang. I didn't expect that. I did, because I'd heard this panel be mentioned before, and I'd seen fan art of like Power with a birthday cake. I didn't realize it was the same scene. Like I went into Chainsaw Man knowing, okay, both Arky and Power are gonna die. I'm ready for it, but fuck, it was gut wrenching. And there was also the gross moments, like the bath in the kiss, the bath kiss. That was fucking disgusting. Congratulations, Fujimoto, you made me want to throw up. Then I want to talk about Arcane for a bit. Now, Arcane is one of those series which I've heard so many people talk about, and so many people say it's really good, you need to watch it. And I've always been kind of like, I don't know. But it was fucking good, man. The visuals were really, really solid. I have no real sort of complaints about it. And it was one of the only pieces of media to make me cry in this entire year. Because I think making me cry is really difficult in series like this. I don't know, I've just never been a person to cry too much when it comes to any media, but the third episode, I don't know what it was about it. It was the writing was good, the visuals were great, the voice acting was insane, particularly considering Powder's voice actor was a kid, I'm pretty sure. It was just so good, it was so high quality, and like I think the whole feeling of two sisters being torn apart because of this catastrophic misunderstanding and catastrophic mess up was just, in general, such a good sort of catalyst for the story. And I had so much fun with this series, and I would say that if you can, go into Arcane as blind as possible. It is a blast. And you don't need to know anything about League. Aardman: An Epic Journey. This was an autobiography by the creators of Aardman, David Sproxton and Peter Lord. Honestly, this book got me really interested in wanting to read more, and I finished it a couple of days ago. So after sort of reading it, it was just this really nice book to me. I really enjoyed seeing more about the Aardman process, how they got from a really small company of just 2 people to what it is today. And you really get this sense of camaraderie, of friendship, and of appreciation of their own work, and wanting to retain the rights to the characters that they've created. It's a really, really interesting book. I would highly recommend it if you're at all interested in Aardman or in animation production. It's really fun. Next up is The Boy, the Mole, the Fox and the Horse. This was an animated film by Lucasfilms, and it was adapted from a book which, funny enough, I got for Christmas last year, and this year it was the Christmas special on the BBC. It's a really sweet book, and I think they managed to translate it incredibly well. There's just this sort of whimsical sense of kind of loneliness, of hope, of all of these things, and they basically just sort of knitted together something to sort of connect all of these illustrations that the book had. I really liked that. I would highly recommend it if you're a fan of animation. They do a lot by adding very little, and I think that that's a really important thing to do. Next is something that I saw in a film festival, which is Luce in the Rock. Funnily enough, this was the very first thing I saw. It was in the animated category, but man, it was so good. It was, I believe it was made by, I can't remember. It was made by a foreign company, and just in general, it's just oozing with charm. It reminds me a lot of stories that I remember reading when I was a kid, and seeing them animated. And just, it had a very musical feel, it had a very wholesome feel to it, and it was just so professional looking. And I don't know, there was just something about it that really stuck with me, and I really hope that they end up releasing it somewhere publicly or make it purchasable, because damn, it is worth your time and money. It is only like 15 minutes long. If you get the chance to see it, check it out. Something that I don't think I really understood about myself for a while was that there are some things from my childhood that I really enjoy watching or exploring. And one of these was Ninjago, which I kind of rediscovered because of Netflix of all things. Netflix had pretty much all the seasons that had released at that point on their servers. So I, slowly made my way through in the entirety of January, rewatching the old stuff that I remember from my childhood, along with all of the newer stuff. Honestly, not too shabby. Like, it's definitely a kids show. You can tell that at points, but there are some legitimately really lovely scenes. Like, recently I've been really taken by the scene in Sons of Garmadon, where it's a brief flashback of Cole and Wu, when Cole and Wu first met, and you see that Cole is climbing this mountain, and then he meets Wu and they chat for a little bit about loss and grief and how to cope with it. And, for a kids show, I think that that's just such a lovely exploration, because one of the lines was something along the lines of, grief affects us in different ways. Some may sing, some may climb mountains, and I don't know, there's just something really mature in certain aspects of Ninjago, which I really appreciate now that I'm older. Crystallized wasn't so great. First Ninjago season I've seen in a long while live, and some of the characters just seemed like assholes, and bits and pieces were weird, but overall I would say that it was clearly a love letter to all of Ninjago's past, not just the bit I grew up with and not just the recent stuff. So I really appreciate it for that. And then we have the Garmadon comics by Trivium. These are probably some of the most fun I've had with Ninjago for a pretty sort of small reason. It's just like, I think I remember seeing them first getting published, and I was like, oh wow, that looks cool. No idea where to buy them though. Eventually, I did manage to buy them on Kindle, and man, they are so fun. I don't know whether it's because Try's got fresh, different eyes to sort of tackle a story from, or whether he was given less restrictions or what, but it was so cool sort of seeing this wandering samurai version of Garmadon helping a village, while still very much feeling like Garmadon. He had his goofy moments, he had his serious moments, and I would say that this is definitely worth the read if you're a Ninjago fan and you want more Garmadon content. I would say that the villain wasn't my favourite in the series, but I think that if this is what things outside the TV show are going to be from this point onwards, that's a really good sign that this series has got a healthy future. And just in general, Ninjago has felt like it's been passing the torch onto the next generation, with one of the original creators, Tommy Andreasen, leaving, and Crystallized basically wrapping up his portion of Ninjago. Recently, during December, he had several interviews along with releasing some behind-the-scenes content of the very initial Ninjago pilot and the concept, and I really want to try and explore that. One of my New Year's resolutions is to try and make some videos talking about that, so here's hoping I can get that done. So next, I've got a couple of series that are very near and dear to my heart. There's Mob Psycho 100 and Love is War. Both Love is War and Mob Psycho completed their third season this year, and they're probably like some of my favourites that I've seen in a good long while. Love is War is a consistently funny anime. I don't know if it's just a perfect blend of everything, but it just does something which just makes me so happy. And yeah, it just managed to hit that spot. For those who've seen the previous seasons, I would say it has got probably some of the best plot points. I still think that Ishigami's plot in the second season is probably my favourite so far, but I would highly, highly recommend that. Then there's Mob Psycho. Oh man, I have such a journey with Mob Psycho. It was one of the first anime I watched back in 2017, 2018, when I was first getting into anime, and I've seen it live since season 2 began. And at first I don't think I really got what it was about, and I think that to some extent I still don't fully get it. But the longer it's gone on, the more I've appreciated it, not only as an adaptation, but just as a story in general. The character work is absolutely incredible. I really, really like what they do with Mob, Dimple, and Reagan this season. I think that Dimple in particular gets a really large amount of focus, and I think it just elevates his character so much. The voice acting is absolutely incredible. The animation is godly, in my opinion. It has just been one of those series which has just blown me away consistently, because whilst there's been series which I'm sure have higher highs, I think the fact that the Mob Psycho bar is just so high is absolutely incredible. The episode of the Telepathy Club going up the mountain, that was one of like the most like beautiful but also really unique looking episodes this season, and I would definitely recommend that. You could just watch that episode on its own, I think. There might be there's an episode before that as well. It's a 2-episode arc. You won't probably get everything, but you get the gist of what Mob Psycho is. I would highly recommend that. Next up is Better Call Saul Season 6. I watched the rest of Better Call Saul last year, so this is the only season I managed to get to see of the Breaking Bad universe live. But I would say that it was a really solid end to the show. I think that once a couple of episodes had passed, I began to see writing on the wall for certain characters. I sort of thought, okay, I can kind of see where some of these characters are going now. And the closer you get to the end, the more you feel that. But in general, I think that they really did a good job on making the ending feel like, okay, if this is the last I see of these characters, I'll be okay with it. And, God, man, Natro's stuff that season, in Season 6, fucking incredible stuff. I also think that the implementation of both Jesse and Walt as flashback characters, that was done very tastefully. It didn't feel too fan-servicey to me. It felt like they were there for a purpose. You get the reason why they're there. They're not just there to be like, oh look, it's the guy I know. And I'd say that Better Call Saul is definitely one of those shows which you need to check out at some point. You don't need to like it. I mean, you probably do. Whatever. Just check it out if you want. Don't check it out if you don't want. Then there's Bojack Horseman. This is a show that I saw fairly early in the year, and I made the unfortunate decision of watching it in quite a short amount of time. And I think that I probably didn't end up appreciating the show as much as other people did. I'm probably going to watch it at some point during 2023. But I do remember there were some beautiful characters and dialogue exchanges. There were some also pretty good jokes. I would say that not all of them landed for me. Maybe that's just because I'm not American, so not all of them fully click. But there's some great social commentary. There's some lovely use of character writing. And in particular, the episodes, The Old Sugarman Place and Time's Arrow, were some of my favourites because of how they did memory, how they explored the past and Bojack's family life by his mother and how her upbringing affected her. And Time's Arrow is just a hauntingly good episode which discusses sort of the idea of your memory failing of the past and just how messed up that could be. And there was just this underlying feeling of dread, which I think was just such a good taste of just what this show can do. And I feel like the series basically ended where it needed to. I'm glad it didn't end on the second last episode, because that would have been a very downer ending. But just in general, there's a lot that you can talk about Bojack, and I think that upon rewatch that will definitely become even more clear to me. So I think I'm nearly at the end of this sort of list of highlights that I want to talk about. However, there are still a few honourable mentions that I do want to sort of rapid fire through quickly. First is Piku Niku. This is a game that I bought on like Boxing Day and finished in a day. This game is so goofy, silly, and fun. I highly recommend it. It's got like vague puzzle elements. It's not crazy hard, but it's got all sorts of little mini games. It's just a goofy little game. I love the dialogue. The humor's just on point for me. It's like Paper Mario, there's fucking MLG air horns occasionally, there's the little guys with arms, there's El Bunko. This stuff makes me sound like a madman, but trust me, it's really, really funny. I would highly recommend it. Play Piku Niku. It might still be on sale, I don't know. In terms of other things that I just want to briefly mention, there's the Dream Machine. The Dream Machine kind of reignited my love of stop motion. I think there were a variety of things, but the Dream Machine is like point and click game where everything is stop motion. Everything has been made physically and then put into the game. It was a very distinctive looking game. I think that the plot wasn't very good, in my opinion. I don't know. I'm mixed about it, because there were some really strong chapters and there were some which weren't so good. I think it was the second to last chapter really did drag. There was a lot of backtracking, a lot of going to and from two different points. I remember finding that quite frustrating. And there were certain things that I couldn't work out without a guide. But when this story works, it really works. I think that the ending is probably the thing that kind of soured some of the experience for me. I personally didn't think it fit what the characters' motivations throughout the entire game were. I don't want to spoil too much, but I would say if you're interested in a point-and-click game which explores the ideas of dreams and sort of abstract feelings, fatherhood, there's a lot of interesting things in there, and I wouldn't say that it's a bad experience. I would just say it could have been better, at least personally for me. I also want to bring a quick mention to Kubo and the Two Strings. A teacher at my university mentioned, the cinema nearby is showing a viewing of Kubo, and having never seen it before, I decided to check it out, and I was just blown away. The first time seeing Leica production, and it just has such a unique vibe to it. I would definitely say that it's... how do I describe it? I don't know. It's just got a very well-crafted story, well-crafted world that's quite focused on the idea of story, memory, and in general, it's just such a lovely little story about someone having to grow up before they preferably should, I would say. I think it's really difficult to try and summarize all of my thoughts about all of the things that I've watched this year. I have tried to capture my honest feelings about them as I've read through them or as I've finished them. I think that this year has taught me to try and reignite my passion for things, to try and reignite my interest in things that I maybe have fell out of love with before, or things that I want to try and look at more and explore more. And just in general, I think that this year has taught me that I do want to try and improve who I am as a person and make sure that I try and see things that I really want to see, because there's just so much in this world. You just need to sort of find what you want and grab it and try and keep an eye on what makes you passionate, what keeps you interested in what you love. In particular, in art, I still feel like I've got a long way to go. It feels like I'm at that stage where the more you learn about something, the more you realise you know nothing about it. And yeah, I feel like there's plenty of things that I want to see next year. There's several animes that I started that I didn't end up finishing this year, one of those being Cyberpunk. I heard great things about Cyberpunk. I also want to finish some more art-based books. I want to... there's a book that I was recommended about stop motion that I want to read. There's The Skillful Huntsman. And just in general, there's a lot of things I want to try and explore more in this coming year. I would love to try and watch more documentaries, read more books, both fiction and non-fiction. I think I also want to try and read more webcomics, because I've seen a couple of webcomics which look really, really promising that I do want to try and catch up with and engage with, because I think that that's something that I've always kind of been on the fringe of. I've always enjoyed making comics, I've been in comic making tournaments, but I've never fully committed to sort of reading many comics in turn. I don't really know how to end this, so I'll just sort of say a quick thank you to everyone who's recommended me things. There's still plenty of things that people have recommended me that I've not had a chance to get around to yet. There was plenty of animations, plenty of anime, plenty of manga, and I do want to try and get through those as and when it crops up. Shit, I forgot to mention Gris. Oh well. Gris was a good game. Very, very beautiful, very good exploration of loss and grief, and the colours are very pretty. And with that, I think that that's everything. Bye.